We're going to talk about an incident in the life of Jesus, and that was read for us a few moments ago. You know what that incident is. It follows closely on the heels of what we talked about this morning with Jesus' raising of Lazarus. And in John chapter 12, you have one of the parallel accounts of what took place when this woman, who's not named in Mark, but is named in John, we know as Mary, the sister of Martha and the sister of Lazarus, and that she anointed Jesus in preparation for his burial. And what she did, Jesus said, was a beautiful thing. Said that she has done a beautiful thing for me, or to me. And tonight we fulfill prophecy. That it is said that every place the gospel is preached, what she did will be spoken of. And that's what we're doing tonight. It's a beautiful account. And it's one that I think we can learn a lot of really good lessons from. So if you're ready for your 3 words, let's see the notebooks again tonight. All right, very cool. Here's your 3 words. Ability, opportunity, and love. Usually ability and opportunity equals responsibility, and that is true. If you have the ability to do something and you have the opportunity to do it, then you do have the responsibility to follow through on that. However, we want to make sure that we're always motivated by the proper thing, and there's no doubt whatsoever that the love that existed between Jesus and his family was deep, and it was shown on this occasion when Mary comes and she pours her heart out just as much as she's pouring the perfume out on the head of Jesus. And she's anointing him, not just with this costly ointment, but with the affection and the love and the devotion that she has for him. And so ability means that we do have something within our grasp. We have something that we can use and utilize. Opportunity means that there is no reason why we should be hindered from doing or performing whatever it is. And we should be motivated by love. So the question I want you to think about as we go through the lesson tonight, and the lesson to take home is this, is that when you think about the opportunities that do arise, when you think about a need that arises or someone who is going through a difficult time, do you think and concentrate more about all the things you don't have, all the things you can't do, all the ways in which you may be deficient or not as capable as someone else? Or do you look at that as being one of those things, I can, I will, because I want to? Because as a Christian, I believe that's what we're always trying to move ourselves toward and motivate ourselves toward. Not all of us are born with a servant's heart. Not all of us grew up in households where a servant's heart was something that was looked at as being maybe a virtuous thing. And that's okay, because now you're in Christ and you're a new creation. And that's part of that heart that's supposed to develop within us. Charlie calls it a generous eye, an eye that's always looking for an opportunity to do good to someone else in a very generous way. And when you read this story about Mary, it's very interesting that in some of the commentaries, when it talks about her doing what she could, she has done what she could, the emphatic use of some of the words that are used there really is talking about she has done what she could with what she had, and that's all she did because that's all she had, but given the opportunity, she would have done so much more. In other words, it's not one of those things where we just say take advantage of your opportunities so much as it is every opportunity you have, do the very most that you can possibly do in that moment and be willing to do even more. That's what the story of Mary was all about. She did what she could, but it was only because she didn't have anything more that she could do. But she wanted to do much more. That's the heart that we're looking for. So let's go to the account, and there's a few things I want us to look at before we get into the actual account. If you want to write down the parallels, there are 2 other Gospels that give a parallel to this account. Matthew 26, verses 6 through 13, and also John 12, 1 through 8. Again, that's Matthew 26, 6 through 13, and John 12, 1 through 8. I did not mention in that Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7 is the account of the sinful woman that comes and washes the feet of Jesus with her tears and dries it with the hair of her head. Also in the home of someone named Simon, except for this Simon was a Pharisee as opposed to the Simon mentioned in this account, which is a leper. Also in the accounts, you'll see that the city itself is different. That in Luke chapter 7, you have Jesus who's been in the city of Nain, and then a woman from the city, that city of Nain, comes in. Mary was not from Nain. Also, the woman in the story in Luke chapter 7 is called a sinner. Mary is never called a sinner. There's also no indication that this is Mary Magdalene, and that Mary Magdalene is the sister of Martha and of Lazarus. But there's been a lot of historical writings that really confuse the stories and and put the stories together to make it Mary Magdalene, who was the sister to Lazarus and Martha, who also anointed Jesus as a sinner in preparation for his death. That is not how these accounts go. So Luke chapter 7 is not a parallel account to what's going on here, even though there's a lot of similarities. Okay, with that being said, this is the account of what happened. From what we saw this morning, the Jewish leaders, the scribes, the Pharisees, and others are conspiring to kill Jesus. And so as you have the enemies of Jesus out there conspiring on how they can put him to death, you have his closest friends holding a dinner for him and honoring him. And this, in Mark's account, as you'll see, is only a few days away from his crucifixion. We're at the point of that last Passover that he's going to be having with his disciples. And it's customary during this Passover meal or this Passover time that they would do certain good deeds for strangers and for the poor. It may be why there was such criticism of her not selling this oil, this ointment, and giving it to the poor, because that was a customary thing that would be done. However, we know that in this account that this perfume that she had, this ointment that she had, was extremely costly. Some have supposed that it was probably Matthew who made the observation of how much it was worth, but then Judas criticizes about it not being sold and says that it should have been sold to give to the poor. Not that he was concerned, as John tells us in his account of it, not that he was concerned about the poor, but he was someone who was stealing from the treasury. But Jesus is there at the meal, and when he's there in the house of this leper, who most likely was someone that Jesus had probably healed, you have Mary coming in, and she does this great thing by breaking this flask and pouring it on his head. And instead of being thankful, instead of celebrating, instead of it being a sad and emotional or encouraging moment, it was marked by criticism instead. It says in the account in Mark chapter 14 and verse 8, and I appreciate Franco reading that for us. In verse 8, she has done what she could. A.T. Robertson said that the literal phrase there is, with what she had, she did. With what she had, she did. She took what she had and she put it to the use that it was intended to be used for. When you look at this ointment that was used, it was something that was from an herb that was usually imported. And it was the best, was imported and sealed in alabaster boxes or vials of some sort and opened on very, very special occasions. But what she had, she did. And one of the things that we see is that when we do what we can, it's not the amount that's really the issue. In the scriptures, it tells us that any of the deeds that we do, whether they're big or small, the Lord sees those things, and he blesses those things, and he appreciates those things. We have passages such as Matthew 10 and verse 42, where it says, and whoever gives one of these little ones only a cup of cold water in the name of a disciple, surely I say to you, he shall by no means lose his reward. It's not the amount that matters, because it is appreciated. And plus, you need to be looking at it from the person who is the recipient of those things. I've probably told you the story before, and on a day like this, it bears repeating. There's a gospel preacher I once knew that years before he was preaching used to roof houses in Arizona. And understandably, when you're roofing houses in Arizona, it's going to get very, very hot. And he had forgotten to bring some water with him, and there was a lady at the house next door that was watering her lawn with her water hose. And he came down off the ladder and asked that lady if he could have a drink of water from her hose, and she said no. Now, he said he remembered that woman. Not fondly, but he remembered her. Now, to her, that's water that's just being sprayed out on the ground. But to him, that was something that would have greatly satisfied his need. Jesus said, if only a cup of cold water is given in the name of a disciple, you don't lose your reward. In other words, the thing that you do may not seem a lot to you, but to a thirsty person, a cup of cold water means a lot. Let me tell you, there's a lot of people, as we've been talking about over this past month, really, that have been through a lot of things, and getting a card in the mail that says, we're thinking about you, we love you, we're praying for you, goes a long ways. People who don't have to worry about preparing a meal because someone's going to be bringing a meal or Ubering a meal to your house means a lot. Knowing that people have you on their mind means a lot. It may not seem a lot to you, But to the one who's getting it, it's like cool water for a thirsty soul. And that's what we're built to be. She did what she could with what she had. In Matthew 25, in verse 1, verse 14 rather, I want us to go back to Matthew 25 for just a moment and revisit the parable of the talents and go through the end of this chapter, making a few comments along the way. But Matthew 25 and starting at verse 14, again I ask the question, do you spend more time worrying about what you can't do, worrying about what you don't have, looking at what others have that are more that have more than you or can do more than you, and excuse yourself by that? Or are you appreciative for the one thing you do have, that one talent you may have? Remember in Matthew 25, starting at verse 14, there's a landowner that goes away, and he travels to a far country, and he gives to his servants differing amounts of money to be used in his absence. There's three servants, and the first one in verse 15 gets 5 talents, another one gets 2, and to another one 1 talent, and each according to his ability. The master knew his servants, and he knew what they could be responsible for, and he was going to hold them accountable for these things. And you notice that throughout this parable, you don't have the 2-talent man complaining that he only got 2, whereas the other one got 5. And when the master comes and the one who had 5 gained 5 more, the one who gained 2 more, and they both received the same blessing, that they took what was given to them, and with what they had, they did. But that 1-talent man, this is where we enter into the picture so often, is that we are like that 1-talent man, and that, Lord, you did not bless me the same way you blessed others. You have not given me as you have given others. And I was afraid of wasting what you did give me. And so I didn't take any risk. I didn't do any investing. I didn't, with what I had, do anything. And so I buried it in the ground. Lord, I just want to give back to you what you gave to me, because I know that you are a hard master. After all, this is your fault that I wasn't a good servant. You are a hard man. You demand much. And I was afraid. Is that me? When I really think about serving others, when I really think about taking advantage of time that's been given to me, is that who I am? Do I blame God? God, you didn't give me any more time. Well, every one of us have 24 hours in a day. I don't know any of us that's been given more hours in a day than someone else. We're both breathing. We both have opportunity. We both have ability. And with what we have, we do, is what we should be thinking. I can't blame God and say, God, you didn't give me as much as the 5 talent. You didn't trust me even as much as the 2 talent. God has given you what you can handle for you to use. And so when I stare myself in the mirror and I examine myself spiritually and I weigh myself on the appropriate scales, not the scales where I compare myself to someone else, but when I put myself on the scales of, am I acting worthy of the gospel of Christ, what should I be doing? And what kind of excuses are going to make me feel good in that day of judgment? And the answer obviously is going to be none. And after this parable, you know that the Lord answered and said to him in verse 26, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown. So he takes the servant's own words. He says, you knew that I reap where I have not sown. I've gathered where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would receive back my own with interest. Therefore take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. In other words, they can be trusted with more because they use more. But from him who does not have, in other words, the ones who does not have because he does not use it, even what he has will be taken away. You use it or you lose it. And cast that unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Wicked and lazy servant. Mary was not that. After this parable, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all his holy angels with him, he will sit on the throne of his glory. And you have this judgment scene. And the king in verse 34 is going to say to those on his right, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me, and I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Those are the things that the righteous do without even thinking about the idea, Lord, I'm doing this to you. Because Jesus tells them, when you do this to one of the least of these, my brethren, you do it to me. When did we do this to the Lord? We did these things because this is who we are. We take what's been entrusted to us, and really, what is taking some clothing? How many of us have extra clothing and could take it to someone, especially a brother or sister who's in need of clothing? I've seen whole communities come together. We had one a few years ago. A house in our neighborhood was struck by lightning, and the house burnt. Everybody was safe, but they lost everything. And the community came together and just showering them with all sorts of things to provide for them. And for most of us, it wouldn't mean anything to give clothing. Some water to someone who's thirsty, someone who's hungry, and giving them some food, what would that really be to us? But to the one who is in need, the one who is sick, the one who is in prison, the one who is thirsty, the one who is hungry, the one who is without food, it means a lot. To Jesus, who was one who was always being sought after, Lord, give to us. If you were here, my brother would not have died. Lord, my son, my daughter is sick. Lord, save me. I'm sinking in the water. To have someone there to give Jesus comfort. How often do you read of that in the Scriptures? That there was someone else who thought about giving Jesus some comfort. And it was Mary. With what she had, she did. And what a glorious thing it was indeed. And she did it with, as we've been mentioning, with the things that she did have. She didn't waste time thinking about what she couldn't do. Instead, she did make a great personal sacrifice. And her sacrifice was indeed very expensive. When you think about the value of those things that she used, 300 denarii, it says in Mark 14 and verse 5. And you remember that a denarii was about a day's wage. 300 denarii, you're talking about nearly a year's worth of wages. And in a matter of seconds, used it all. Is that good use? Is that good stewardship? Is that proper accountability? Is that making full use? How many of us may have been the same as it says in this account, those that were there, the others, the disciples, specifically Judas, in saying this could have been sold and a lot more done with 300 denarii than for it to all be gone in a matter of seconds. See, it's a lot easier to criticize when someone's doing something that's good. It's always easier to criticize when someone's showering extravagance on someone else or laboring, making hard decisions that you don't have to and that you don't have to be accountable for that decision. Someone else does. It's real easy to sit back and criticize what they've done. I really think that for most of us that have that critical spirit, that critical eye, that we're always seeing the thing that's wrong. You're always seeing that, I've got a typo somewhere in my slides, and I'm always fearful of that because I know they're everywhere. I had no idea this morning if I was using affect or effect correctly. But since no one said anything, I hope that was correct. But I don't know. But for some of us, we do have a critical eye. It's easier for us to say what was wrong about something than what was right about something. And it's not encouraging. It's not edifying. It's not building up. There's a time and place for correction, yes. But just being critical is not edifying. And what we see in this account is that these people were critical of Mary in honoring Jesus in the way that she did, while they did nothing but eat a meal at a leper's house. It's real easy, if you're not the one making the decisions, to question someone else. And I truly believe that if we were busier, if I was busier serving, I'd have a lot less time to criticize others for those things. It's a very important lesson, I believe, as well, to know that when they looked at this, the language that's used is, why was this wasted? How does that word catch you in this narrative? That it was wasted. She took this expensive perfume, she poured it on Jesus, and they said it was wasted. That causes my skin to crawl to think about that. Wasted. What could Mary give to show how much appreciation she had for what Jesus had done for mankind and for her? What he was about to do, because she seemed to be the one who had the spiritual insight into what was about to take place. His disciples and Judas and others, this was wasted. You know, when you have that person that you love, nothing you do for them to express that love is wasted. And it doesn't matter how big or how small. If it is something that's big, it's not wasted. But it's meant to show the level of devotion. And what happens to Mary, I think, is something that we're all experienced from time to time. In 1 Peter, it tells us that we've spent enough of our lifetime in doing the will of the Gentiles, that we walked the same way that they walked and did the same kinds of things that they did, but now we don't do those things any longer. And we know that we spent enough of our past in doing those things. And it says that this world is going to think it strange that we no longer walk with them in the same flood of destruction or dissipation that they are walking in, and they will speak evil of you. How many people tell you that on a Sunday night you're wasting your time coming to services? How many brethren think it's a waste of time that we spend too much time assembling when we could be doing other things? Other things that they say are good works. Other things they say that would be edifying and building up and build better relationships. Brethren, this time is not wasted. This time is vital. This is our time to be with the Lord. How many people will tell you that when you use your money in the Lord's work, that it's being wasted? You're wasting your money. There are even brethren who say, why would you give to a collection where this collection is going to be used and maybe they'll just store it up and they're not going to use it the way that you want them to anyway. You could do a lot better with your money if you take it out there in the world and you choose what to do with it. It's real easy to criticize when you're the one not doing the work. And to that preacher that's in this country and that country or the next state over, to them it means a lot. But how many people will tell you that you're wasting it? How many times people will tell you that you're wasting your time trying to sit down and open a Bible with your friend or your neighbor because you never talk about politics or religion with people if you want to keep them as your friends? So you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time talking to that loved one that you haven't been able to reach for all these years. They're not going to listen to you anyway. How many people will tell you that you're wasting your time? We're not wasting time. Don't give in to the criticism that you hear from others. We're honoring the Lord, and that's what we're all about. In Romans chapter 12, verse 1, how would we define how much we should be willing to give to the Master? In Romans 12 and verse 1, Paul says it this way: I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. In comparison, you have Malachi 1 and verse 8, where the prophet of old says, when you offer the blind as a sacrifice, speaking for God, God says, is it not evil? When you offer the lame and sick, is it not evil? God says, offer it to your governor. Would he be pleased with you? Would he accept you favorably? Says the Lord of hosts. You know, it's interesting that with all the things that Jesus had done, and great and powerful and mighty as Jesus was, that when Jesus was anointed, it wasn't done in the temple. That wasn't too far from there. But Jesus wasn't anointed in the temple. He's a great king, but he wasn't anointed in any palace. He's the great high priest, but he was not anointed by any other priest. He was anointed by a woman in the house of a leper because they appreciated who Jesus was. We are not wasting time. We're not wasting resources. We're not meant to waste the opportunities that we have because they don't always come. She did it while she did have that opportunity. What if she had waited a few more days? Jesus would have been crucified. For all of us, there's probably those times in our life where we've missed that opportunity that we wanted. I've known of some people that they started to buy into Bitcoin back when it was just a few pennies a share. And then it got up to $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 maybe. I don't know what it is. It's dropped again now, but still, if you'd bought it for a few pennies, there's a lot of people who missed out on that opportunity. And usually when we think about missing opportunities, it's things like that. I knew of one who had an opportunity to be on the ground floor of this burger place in his hometown many, many years ago. But he never knew McDonald's was going to be popular. Missed out on that opportunity. What scares you more? Missing those opportunities or missing the opportunity to tell someone you love them, that you care for them? The opportunity to serve someone who's in need. What scares you more? Serving and being of service of others is an imperative. Galatians 6 and verse 10 teaches us that as we have opportunity, let us do good to all men, especially those of the household of faith, especially your brethren you know. You know them better, and you know their needs more often. But when you have opportunity, do good to all people. James 4 tells us and teaches us that if we're going to say that we're going to do all these different things, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so in James 4 verse 17 it says, therefore to him who knows to do good and he doesn't do it, you remember what it says it is? You have missed the mark that God has set. You've sinned. You went beyond what God has given you the authority to do. You sat when you should have acted. You prayed for an opportunity and God set it before you, and you transgressed and trampled over it by ignoring it. To know to do good and not do it is called a sin. There's a lot of things I regret in life, but the things I regret the most are the things that I did not do when I know I should have, because they don't come again. They're gone, and you've missed it. Mary took advantage of this opportunity. She knew what was about to happen with Jesus, and she knew that this was the time, and she was not going to let it slip by. People can criticize as much as they want, but she was going to honor her Lord. They can say that she put all these things to waste, but Mary knew differently. And Jesus, you can even hear him say to those who would criticize, leave her alone. She has done a beautiful thing to me. And when you do that small act of service, that big act of service, whatever act of service it is, it's the same principle. You have done a beautiful thing to me. And that's what we need to walk away with. There was a quote that I came across this week as I was studying this. This is from Barclay's study of Mark. He says, love can see that there are things, the chance to do which comes only once. If love is true, there must always be a certain extravagance in it. It does not nicely calculate the less or more. It is not concerned to see how little it can decently give. If it gave all it had, the gift would still be too little. There is recklessness in love which refuses to count the cost. And I thought that was beautifully said, because you can see in this that there was no doubt whatsoever the love that Mary had for Jesus. And what she did was indeed a beautiful thing. When you think about Mary, what's so unique about her is that she's always found at the feet of Jesus. And in the account where Jesus is in the house and he's teaching, Martha is busy with serving, but Mary is there listening at his feet. At the grave of Lazarus, she comes running and falls at the feet of Jesus and worships him in her deepest moment of sorrow. And here in this account, you see her at the feet of Jesus again after she's anointed him with this costly oil. She's wiping his feet with the hair of her head. She's always at his feet. And what she did, as Jesus said, will always be spoken of wherever the gospel is preached. Because, brethren, when we think about obeying the gospel and who it is that we become once we obey the gospel, this is it. We become like her. That's the testimony and the memorial that's given that we can learn so much from. Emotional as she was on occasions, and the way in which maybe we would also want to criticize Mary because she's not helping Martha serve, or she's not doing this, and she's overcome with her emotions. And yet this is one that Jesus said she will always be spoken of for what she has done. She's done a beautiful thing for me, and it was for Jesus alone that she did it. The question I'm going to leave with you is, what are you keeping sealed up? What is that time, that opportunity, that ability that you have that you're not putting to use? Put it to use. It will mean so much to the recipient, even if it doesn't seem like a lot to you. It's a lot to the one that you offer it to. So do so, that we might bless the Lord as well. If you're subject to the invitation tonight, if you need to be baptized for the remission of your sins, if there's something that we can do to help you get back on the right path, if you need to confess sin that's in your life and you need help in repenting of that and moving on from it, whatever that need is, we want to be of service to you. As together we stand and sing this song, please come if we can help.